Welcome to the wonderful world of wine, exploring all things wine with you. We are your hosts, Kim Simone and Mark Lenzi, and you can find us on all social media at The Wonderful World of Wine. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the wonderful world of wine, discussing trending topics in the wine world and having conversations with interesting wine folks. Here with my co-host, Mark. How are you today, Mark?
Everything is great, Kim, and you?
Good. Yeah, pretty good. So our guest today is an author, someone who has been in the wine industry for quite a while. Her name is Carrie Boyle, and she has a very interesting book about wine, but it's also more of a philosophy about wine as well. So Carrie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
So I know we always like to start by asking our guests to just give a little snippet about what they do, who they are to our listeners. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about you?
All right. So I live in Northern California. I'm in Sacramento. So I am right in the middle of all the wine country: Napa, Sonoma, Amador, El Dorado, Lodi, Calaveras. Everything is with Livermore. Everything's within an hour or an hour and a half drive. So I've been in the industry my entire adult life. I own my own wine shops. I worked for Total Wine, opening their first stores in California. I sell wine wholesale. I've produced a wine festival in Sacramento, been a wine writer, a wine educator, a wine judge. If it has something to do with wine, I'm probably doing it.
That is a lot of different things in the wine world.
Yes. So I am immersed 100% of the time.
What do you consider to be your sort of prime thing right now?
My prime thing right now has to obviously do with the book, but I am promoting an approach to wine appreciation that is different than what has historically been the norm, which has, in my opinion, been pretty academic, and it can be very dry, and it probably takes a little extra effort for somebody to finally get to their aha moment. So I'm considering myself an aha orchestrator, and I'm trying to give people the confidence to trust their own palate, to trust their own experience, and understand that whatever they're experiencing is authentic, it's valid, and they should not be afraid to share that with others. I'm doing a lot of experiments, not ones that are in the book, but like with PTC paper, where I start every event and give everybody a piece of PTC paper. And then after 5 seconds, they tell me, was it bitter, extremely bitter, mildly bitter, or it tasted like paper? And then I let them know it's a genetic test. And, you might be a super taster, you might be an average taster, you might be a non-taster. And people apologize for the results. And then they're always trying to retake the test and change the results to be whatever the person next to them was being, or what it turned out to be. And they hear the word super taster, and it doesn't matter what it is, they want to be that thing. So it's like a baseline that people can see from the people in the room that we are never going to have the same experience, because at the very basic level, biologically, we are all different. So that's kind of the starting point. That I'm doing all kinds of experiments with wine and music and beats per minute, or blind tasting, and like the opaque black wine glasses, where I'm basically pouring the same wine but maybe at two different temperatures with two different sets of tasting notes, asking people whether they're red or white and which one they like better, only to reveal that they're the same wine. They're experiments in personal discovery, in sensory discovery, and they automatically start a conversation because people are just surprised by whatever just happened. And so they want to share it, and they want to know what the other person experienced. And it's a great mechanism for connection and conversation. And I want people to know that, wine is that thing. Wine is a great place to start and a great tool to find those paths.
Carrie, I love the book. And for our listeners, the book is called The Mindful Glass Hands-On Wine Lab. And it's a different approach to wine. And I knew right away it was going to be a different approach to wine when you started out right away with a health warning about wine, about drinking. And very rarely when I read any books in the industry does someone put a health warning warning in the beginning, like an advisory. What was your thought behind starting the book like that?
Well, I think when I started writing the book, or shortly after, I think Vivek Murthy, the Surgeon General, he had said, no alcohol is healthy. And, it didn't ring true. And of course, I did a lot of research and, found out what the limitations of that assessment are. But we also have a severe loneliness epidemic. And I think that, of course, we have to be mindful of consumption and what the effects are. But we've been doing this for 8,000 years. And only recently, 2020, when we were all removed from each other's presence, did this loneliness epidemic seem to really snowball out of control. So I just wanted to put it in context that, okay, yes, there are things you should be aware of, but also there's an amazing health benefit, soul benefit, spirit benefit, mental benefit to engaging with wine in a responsible way.
When we think back to, so many shows that we have recorded and people that we have spoken to, there does seem to always be this sort of underlying current of the social benefits of wine. And your book definitely focuses on that way that wine can bring people together, but you also focus a lot on what wine can reveal about yourself personally. Can you talk a little bit about why you took that direction for the book?
So the culmination of this book was after a series of things that happened. I mean, obviously 2020, we all started to exist electronically with each other digitally. My dad also went into hospice in 2020, and I took care of him with my mom for 8 days. And every day I found myself reminiscing and being nostalgic about my memories with my dad. So my dad was not the easiest guy to get along with. Amazing dad, kind of a grumpy old guy, not super social. But most of my favorite memories with my dad are centered somehow around wine and food. I have very specific memories of the bottle of wine we drank when my dad took us to Monterey for my brother's 30th birthday, or when my dad got excited about trying caviar and champagne and had me run to a local caviar farm. Or at holidays where my dad's only friends were really our family. He didn't have outside friends, but he would invite any orphan, any people that didn't have places to go for holidays. Everybody was invited. So we'd have a house full of people. And my dad really never said anything to anybody, but he was in the kitchen meticulously cooking, and he would bring out special bottles of wine. And he was really the best version of himself. And it was a way of caring for other people. Like, this was his love language, and he didn't have to make small talk or, this is how he spoke to people and took care of people in a really genuine way. And I learned that from him because I'm not particularly social or comfortable in situations where I don't know people. But if you want to come to my house and I will either share wine with you or cook for you, you will know I love you and I care for you and that you're important just through that act. I also went to the country of Georgia in 2023, which was a total reset on just how I wanted to live my life. We're one thing after another. We're always checking email, answering phone calls, checking our calendar. If we have nothing to do, we don't know what to do with ourselves. We go find something to do. But in Georgia, most of our time was spent around a table, different tables with different groups of people. I knew none of them except my husband. And we would drink wine and eat food at a supra, which is the Georgian feast. There would be toasts of gratitude. They just showed appreciation for all the things they had in life. Eventually, these dinners would devolve into singing off key and dancing. And it was such a magical thing. And I loved it so much. So, that really had an impact, especially when shortly after that, we head into this severe decline in the wine industry where, all the reports are that younger people don't find wine that accessible. They're looking for things with meaning and purpose. And so it just kind of shaped my approach and the way I talked about wine. I've always been someone who said, you should like what you like and you should get there however you can. And if ice cubes in your wine make you happy, you should be doing that. But it was just all these things together that kind of reshaped how I was engaging with wine, even in my own life. I even got a wine drinker out of my husband during COVID because it was the only thing that we could do was go sit outside of the winery and sip wine. And before, he used to stand outside the front door and just wait for me to come out. He wouldn't come
Oh, no.
Yeah, we did our first wine excursion in Amador County. He bought himself his first six pack, and I thought, all right, we've got him. Over 5 years now, 6 years, he has also like learned to use wine as a way to engage with other people and to tell people he cares about them, because he'll buy his own stash of wine that we don't drink the same thing. And he loves to bring them out at dinner and share what he got him. And it's another point of conversation. So it was just a whole mental flip over the last 5 years, and it keeps getting refined.
Your whole experience and adventures in wines really shows in the book and the topics you covered. And one of the things you mentioned was you talked about mindfulness and to slow down. It's not what you know, or it's not, how did you phrase that about mindfulness? It was your goal is to notice more, but not to know more, I believe is what you said. And I think that's a great approach to wine. Enjoy it for what it is and share it. And you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, I think that's a great place for anybody to start. It's such an amazing, I hate to use the word product, but it's such an amazing thing that, even like I was saying with music experiments, the tiniest thing can change your perception. But, you just sit, you slow down, you take a breath, and you just notice. You don't judge, you just notice. And, the more you do it, I think the more that becomes innate in the way you engage with the world. So I know that even when I step out of the car, we're on a road trip somewhere, I'm like sniffing the wine like I'm sniffing the air like my basset hound. It's taught me to be more, mindful, thoughtful, intentional. And it's a great way to take a break for yourself too. Like, I'm talking about all this rushing around and jumping from thing to thing. You just take 20 minutes in your favorite chair with the right lighting, and you just sit. I know that's hard for a lot of people, but I want people to learn.
You're listening to The Wonderful World of Wine, and we are your hosts, Mark Lenzi and Kim Simone, exploring all things wine with you. You can find us on our website, thewww.wine. Our program is supported by Franklin Public Radio, and you can find us on social media at The Wonderful World of Wine. Today, our special guest is Carrie Boyle. Her book is The Mindful Glass, Hands-on Wine Lab. Her website is the-mindful-glass.com. You can find her on Instagram at the.mindful.glass on Instagram. And welcome back, Carrie. I just had so many questions. I love hearing you talk about wine, but I had questions more about the book. On the show, Kim and I always talk about people trying to learn their flavor profile, to always keep tasting, to learn what you like. You mentioned earlier about learning things, and what you like is what you like. And you talk about awakening the senses in the book and how to create aroma memories. And you had a really interesting exercise about creating aroma capsules. And a lot of people spend a lot of money on these wine aroma kits, but you actually had some tips in the book about making your own aroma capsules. You want to talk about how people can learn in your book how to do that?
Yeah, because I think I started doing this maybe before they were packaging the aroma sets. So you just get little, I think when I started, we were using those little plastic film canisters. Those are probably not around anymore, but any small plastic container with a lid, and you just gather things from around the kitchen, out of the spice cabinet, the zest of lemon, orange, anything you want, really, because it is practice that makes it a skill. So you put a cotton ball in the little container, and you put a drop of an extract or some spices on that, or you put some zest in there, and you close them up. You might want to put a label on the bottom so that if you really can't identify it, there's the cheat code at the bottom. But it's another way to be mindful and really pay attention. So you just set them out however you want, and you're maybe have a pen and paper to keep track, and you're going through and seeing if you can actually attach a label to the smell. And I think you'll find, like, one that always got me was like black olives. But it's a thing that once you correctly name it once, especially if you name it in your wine, I think you remember it forever. Like your brain just at some point starts to play along and sets up a filing cabinet and just starts putting thing in the file. So it's easy to recall going forward. But yeah, it's just, and it is a skill. You do keep practicing. And, and a lot of these experiments in this book, you don't even need wine to do the experiment. It is really sensory exploration, and it's learning yourself as much as it is learning about wine.
It's almost like a bunch of things that you would find in like a sensory museum. You know how there are those like hands-on places that you can bring your little kids to, but then there's also fun things for older people to do. Yeah,
Okay.
I've definitely seen some of those, and this kind of reminds me of that sort of, and it's a great way to learn. And not everybody is just learning by reading or learning by listening, but having that hands-on activity really is a great way to cement it in your brain, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's another thing that I'm working, like it's something that's always top of mind is like creating an emotional connection. So if you're doing this by yourself or you have a friend over and you guys are playing the game and trying to identify these things, there's a real sense of accomplishment when you get it right.
Yeah.
Because you find that, a lot of them you're like, oh, it's on the tip of my tongue, but what the heck is that? And when you have a little, you get excited, like that's an emotional connection. So now that's a firm memory in your brain. And we learn better and more strongly when there's emotion attached to it. And I think as that builds and you have more of these little aha moments, then pretty soon you're self-perpetuating and you go out and start exploring on your own. And maybe that means you do pick up a wine book or something. But this is a way, it's like a gentle entry into wine appreciation. But again, it really is learning to trust yourself and know how you perceive things and what your favorite things are, what things you don't like.
You had so many exercises in the book, how to learn acidity, tannin, sweetness, alcohol, body, all things that our listeners hear out in the wine world. Which experiment or term of those do you think is the most important that someone learning wine should do first?
I would say that the mindfulness activities are probably first and foremost, just so you learn to slow yourself down. When I do wine judging, I come in like a whirling dervish or just super chaotic. I sit down at the wine table and I've got 15 wines in front of me and I'm like sniffing and trying to evaluate. It will take me a good 5 or 7 minutes to slow down where I can actually notice anything because I'm going through my checklist in my brain. Did I return all my emails? Did I feed the dog? Did I do the thing? It does take a certain amount of time to slow down and train yourself to be able to pay attention. And so the mindfulness thing, but the one that you just suggested, the acidity, the structural testing, I've been doing a little different version of this. And this is like a little extra thing you can do with that experiment that's in the book. So we're taking citric acid, we're tasting all of the elements individually and just noticing how I perceive them. And then I started just in the last 3 weeks, I'm putting them in Dixie cups and maybe I'm putting a little bit of water to dilute them. But then I start mixing them together one at a time. And it is amazing how apparent the changes and what the effect is on each other. If you put tannin in with honey or tannin in with acid, it is a dramatic difference. And you start to see how all these things together create something that's not so angular, not so noticeable in one direction or another. It becomes much more balanced in the way that it presents. You can even take those things if you want to pretend like you're making your own little wine. You just get some juice. It doesn't really matter what it is, but you start adding those elements to it. You throw a little vodka in there, a little acidity. It's a step-by-step process that shows you how all these things interact and how it also helps with wine and food pairing. You start to understand how these different things affect how you taste.
It sounds very similar to an activity that I do with my students in one of my intro classes where it's just that. It's like the individual components and then tasting different wines with foods that have those components and how different elements in food can change a wine. You can have the same wine with a whole bunch of different things and it will change. It will just be dramatically different depending on what the food is that you have.
Yeah. And I think it's slowing down to notice those things because I think we eat so fast, we drink so fast, we do all the things. And this it kind of puts you in this narrow box with no outside noise. So you can just really pay attention. And I think that in and of itself is great for us.
Good to tell people that that's the difference between tasting and drinking.
Right.
Paying attention, thinking about it.
Yeah, I did this one wild experiment at a local winery. They were doing a seminar on something, but the way they started it is you went into their cellar with all the barrels and they gave you a black glass with wine in it and they were playing heavy metal music. So loud. And they wanted you to taste the wine, make all your mental notes, put the wine glass down, and then go upstairs and try like a flight of 3 wines in regular clear glasses and see if you could tell which one it was out of the 3.
Fascinating.
It's extremely difficult because there was so much noise and distraction with the heavy music. Like, I give up. I don't know. Yeah, it's amazing. Like, I'm continually having aha moments, and I've been doing this for more than 25 years. And that's the great thing about wine.
One of the things we talk about a lot and hear a lot about in the wine world is the shape or the size of a wine glass and why it matters. And you had a very interesting experiment where the wine glass ice water experiment, you called it. Can you explain that to our listeners and about it?
Yeah, so a lot of these are experiments I've just done over the course of my career that made an impact. That was an experiment done by Riedel. They were doing it in their wine glasses in particular, but since people don't need to go spend $300 to do this little test, you just grab glasses from around the kitchen, thin-lipped, fat-lipped, straight-sided, bowl with the narrow opening, or you could just do it with all the different wine glasses you have in your house. You just mix up a pitcher of very, very cold ice water and put it in each of the glasses. And then you just take a sip out of each one, sequentially, and you see how differently they hit your palate. Like, some of it will be just like a rush of water across the back of or the middle of your tongue. Some of it will like delicately drop in around the front of your tongue. And it's not to say one is better than the other. It's just to demonstrate that it is actually a thing. I'm also a fan of, my husband drank out of a pint glass until 2020. He drank wine out of a pint glass for the 3 times that he would drink it a year because he was afraid he would break the wine glass. And that made him happy. Giving him a wine glass stressed him out. So I am always a fan of drink out of whatever glass or vessel makes you happy. I'll tell you what the common approach is or what is usually recommended, and you can take that information and do whatever you want with it.
Coming back to the, make yourself happy.
Yeah, I am a firm believer in that. We need all the joy we can get right now.
Yeah. And wine should be happy. I feel like sometimes there's too much stress associated with picking the right wine, pairing it with the right food. Will I like it? Will I not like it? It's tough on a lot of people, feeling like you don't have the right amount of knowledge to be able to make the quote unquote right decision. So I like books like yours and folks who teach like you do to try to break down those barriers and just help people get to the core of this is something that just it should be enjoyed.
Yeah, and all of us who have been enjoying wine for a very long time, we know all these things. Like, I don't think we've articulated them or verbalized them. We know what amazingness can come out of a glass of wine or a bottle of wine, but we still don't talk about it that way to other people. So I'm trying to normalize this version of the conversation. You can get into the techie stuff and the rules, quote unquote rules. You can do all that once you have found your voice and found your path with wine. But until that, I think we should be celebrating all these amazing benefits that you can access by paying attention and trusting your experience.
You had worked in wine retail, you'd mentioned in wine stores, and you talk a lot in the book about how to find wines in retail stores and basically that you can stay within your budget. And you also did a great exercise about a scavenger hunt in retail store. I was wondering if you could talk a little about that and advice on shopping for wines.
The scavenger hunt is just fun for, I think, exposure. Reading about it in a book is one thing, but if we go to the store shelf and we can see where these labels are, or we can read whatever the winery has to offer on the back of the label, or we see the tasting notes that are posted by the staff in the store, I think it just helps it coalesce and make more sense in our mind if we hands-on. think hands-on is the best way to go. I know you've had a couple of guests who have suggested that ask for help, and I'm a firm proponent of that because wine stores can be overwhelming and you shouldn't have to know everything. And I don't think you have to worry about describing the wine. I think you can tell people what wines you've had before that you like, or this is for a pink flamingo party in the pool, during the summer, or I want a really big brooding glass of red wine that I can sit in my leather chair by the fire and read a book, or, you can describe it any way that makes sense to you. And, that's another benefit. We get to be super creative because you can't just say, I like wine, right?
Right.
And I think that people in restaurants and wine shops, good versions of restaurants and wine shops, they love to talk about wine. They get very excited and very passionate. And I think that helps us make decisions. If we know somebody else is excited about it, we feel confident in grabbing that bottle.
Carrie, Kim is our foodie person here on the show. And you had a lot of information in the book about food and wine pairing and a lot of experiments, food experiments like wine and butter for texture experiment, wine and bacon for salt. You had wine and raw greens for tannins. You did so many different ways to find and explain pairing in food and wine, which I thought was really great. What experiment for food and wine that you have in the book do you think is the best that shows how food and wine balance works and the importance of it?
So this is when there's a different approach that I discovered during COVID when I was taking a ton of online classes. Do you know Francois Chartier? He's a French-Canadian sommelier who came up with the pairing of aromas instead of structure.
No.
He says that if you find two things with common dominant aroma molecules, they will blend perfectly. So the one that I take this one around all the time is licorice and an oak aged red wine. And not like Twizzlers licorice, like I get Panda Australian licorice. And there is from the barrel aging and the anise, there is a shared aroma molecule between those two. It is crazy. You take a bite of the licorice and try the red wine again, and it just makes it sing. Like all the fruit comes forward, super bright. It's wild because I would usually not be excited about pairing candy with a red wine, but it works so well. And, it's like lemongrass and like a Riesling. Those also share.
That actually sounds more like Mark's philosophy with pairing wine and food. You tend to focus more on the flavors and matching the flavors and the aromas, whereas I do the structure. But I like that.
Yeah, well, and you can mix it up.
Yeah,
a little of everything.
Yeah,
you had wine and honey, wine and salted almonds.
You know what? I love the acidity tasting. Where you do, that was from a Tim Hanai experiment when we first started in the wine industry.
Was that the mustard one? Wine and mustard?
Yeah, it could be wine and mustard or wine, anything with acidity, but wine and lemon juice. It's just, I love acidity. Like I could live on, high acid white wines. That's where I exist. But I just think like acid is such a helper in so many regards in creating interesting wines and creating interesting food. So I think that's a fun one to play with. And again, not everybody's going to have the same reaction. So it's just a matter of experimenting and not being afraid, like nothing bad's going to happen. You might get a slightly unpleasant flavor, but you'll learn a lot. You'll learn a lot about your taste. You'll learn a lot about how these things interact. So yeah, I say just play. Go crazy.
You had mentioned you were a wine judge, or you are a wine judge. In the book, you talk about the 20-point wine rating system, which is something our listeners probably don't hear much out there in the wine world. We're used to the 100-point scale. Do you want to explain the 20-point scale rating system in wine? And is that what you use when you judge?
That's what I use when I'm teaching people to judge, just because it's just a more concise format. And I'm right near UC Davis, and I think that's their rating system. So yeah, it's small points. So I think when you get a big span of points, like a category is 20 points or something, it's harder to make a decision because there's too much in front of you. But if you only have you can choose 1, 2, or 3 points for this particular element, it's much easier to make a decision. And we used to do these, people love wine judging classes classes when I had worked at Total Wine and when I had my own wine shop. It just, I think it seems so beyond reach. But this, I think, once they go through it once, it just makes it very accessible and very easy to understand. So the 20 points, if a wine got a perfect 20-point score, it would be a wine that was beautiful and also perfectly in balance. So, I mean, that's kind of what the ultimate goal of the rating system is, that nothing is too sharp or too flat or too sweet or too bitter.
20 does seem to be a more reasonable scale to use than 100 because you sort of disregard the bottom 50 anyway. So,
right. So every point has more impact.
right.
You also had talked about ideas of how to entertain with wine and even mentioned savoring of a bottle of sparkling in the book.
Still need to learn how to do that.
So how does Carrie make wine entertaining in your own personal life? Are you savoring at parties? Are you going crazy with this?
When I started savoring, like I would show up to every party with a sword. So I was like, please ask me. And then I think it was my grandmother's 100th birthday, and she lived in a retirement community, and I had to go into the kitchen, the kitchen of the facility, and ask for a knife, but they wouldn't give me like a real knife. It was the lightest weight, flimsiest knife possible, and I was like, oh, I don't know about this. So for my big savoring for my 100-year-old grandmother, the knife hit the lip and just went tink, and I was like, you couldn't get enough like force behind it, and my grandmother, of course, noted that you're not opening it right. Like, I know. So I feel like that was kind of the point where I just was a little deflated. But I mean, I will. Give me a couple glasses of wine, I'll be happy to do it. But the one thing I love to do, it's probably my favorite thing to share, is I'm actually getting ready to do a post about it on social media. Is my husband and I, we oftentimes are like passing and each other in the night, and he eats with, he's eating whatever he's eating, I'm eating whatever I'm eating. We don't often sit down together, but we will do a date night. If I have a bottle of wine that I'm really intrigued by, that's like the starting point. And then I'll go find recipes from wherever that bottle of wine originated, and we will cook together. He's my sous chef. I don't know if you agree with this. He's sous chef and grill master. I'm executive. And we're preparing all the ingredients, and we have a playlist on. Sometimes he builds it himself. But like the other night we did, I had a beautiful bottle of sake that I'd been wanting to drink for a while. So we made yakitori and rice and Japanese cucumber salad and edamame and miso soup and this beautiful sake. And I picked up a playlist of J-rock, which is Japanese, like heavy metal, rock and roll, and pop music. So all stuff that we're completely unfamiliar with. And, you're chopping things up, you're dancing around the kitchen, you're drinking some wine, and then you sit down and have this lovely meal of things you probably would not have prepared without a little inspiration. And then after that, we watched an episode of Drops of God, which is based in Japan. And then we watched a little anime. So it's like a whole date night. We get to travel a different place, experience something new, a new food, new music, new wine. And it's a really lovely way to spend time together with a partner or with friends. And my husband loves it. Like, he loves it.
I think that's so awesome.
Yeah, it's really, really fun. Like,
yeah, that's top level entertainment there.
Yeah, we do our own Georgian supras. We do, it's just the two of us. And the music can get pretty weird. We did Austrian food. I can't remember. You had some yodeling somewhere. It might have been.
Wow. So you gave us a lot of ideas that weren't in your current book. Is there a future book in the making to follow up with all these new ideas?
Yes. So I have another book that's a little more of a memoir that just kind of explores, my personal relationship with wine and how I came to appreciate all the things that I've gotten access to, and not in a monetary way, but just being able to cultivate gratitude and mindfulness and connection with other humans. So it's coming out in the next couple of months. And then I will have a date night cookbook coming out before the holidays that kind of gives you like 26 date nights that you can do, like the one I just just described. But that,
Oh, that's awesome. I
yeah,
can't wait for that to come out.
yeah, it's so fun. We're eating some really strange stuff, but it's super fun. I'm listening to some very questionable music, but yeah,
That's
and
those taking chances things, right?
yeah. And, I'm also in conjunction with this book, I'm putting together events like taste, perception, tasting, exploration events. So I'm just finalizing what I will be offering with that. That will be things people can come through a tasting lab with me in the near future.
Great. Carrie, thank you. The book is very interesting. The Mindful Glass Hands-On Wine Lab. I highly suggest it to people who want to just explore wine in a different way. I learned a lot from it. I appreciate your work, Carrie, and thank you
You.
for being with us today. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I
Yeah,
love
such a
yeah.
lovely approach, and I love the hands-on and so creative. We're just really, really cool.
Oh, thank you. Well, I hope people enjoy it. They can learn some creativity and inspire some creativity in
Yeah.
themselves.
Thank you for listening today to The Wonderful World of Wine. We have been your hosts, Mark Lenzi and Kim Simone, with our special guest today, Carrie Boyle of The Mindful Glass. Her website is the-mindful-glass.com, and you can find her on social media at the.mindful.glass. We are supported by Franklin Public Radio. You can find our past episodes on SoundCloud, and you can find us on our website, thewww.wine. Cheers!
Cheers.
Why, why?